Well, let's close with this. How about selecting a law school? How do you decide? How should a student decide where to go to law school? I mean, it's obviously a matter of prayer, discernment, research. You have a couple pieces of advice in that regard.
Yeah, obviously the numbers matter as to sort of what becomes a stretch school, what becomes safety schools, and what becomes competitive schools.
And so you can look at your LSAT score and GPA as a sort of door closing device that God uses to keep you keep you from particular schools that you're not going to be able to get into, for example. And maybe you should look at the window around where you would fit in the class profile based on your LSAT and GPA. And every school and all the books on law schools have sort of a graph on if you have an LSAT here and a GPA here. These are the kinds of places that this will be a good place for you. So be aware of that, of course.
Yeah, there's lots of online services. You can plug in your GPA and LSAT, and all of a sudden you can start seeing probabilities of admission. So that starts setting out those three categories. And students often focus really on the stretch schools, which I think is a bit of a mistake. I mean, everybody has those schools they've always wanted to go to, would love to go to, but oftentimes it's the safety school who your LSAT and GPA score is exciting to them because you are going to help them move up through the U.S. News and World Report rankings, and so they're willing to buy your LSAT and GPA in a way, buy you as an applicant by throwing some free financial aid your way, a certain percentage off the full purchase price for a legal education at their institution.
Yeah, I don't think we can underplay that at all. And today I see in law students, and I think your experience is the same, I'm seeing law students today racking up six-figure debt routinely.
Absolutely.
That limits their career choices. It provides stress on their young families, and it squeezes them into a position where they can't do some of the things that they went to law school to do in the first place, sometimes. And I think they presume upon the future by getting six-figure debt, thinking, oh, I'll pay this off eventually. And now, I mean, I'm not saying don't go into debt to go to law school, but let's say you can go to a top 10 law school, and you're gonna have to go into debt. But let's say you could go to a lower tier school. Your LSAT is in the sweet spot, and they're going to give you some money to go. I'd strongly consider that as an option. Is that sound advice?
Yeah, I mean, I tell students at the end of the day, there's probably 3 law schools you're going to be choosing from. After you apply and you get acceptances and rejections back. One is the best law school you got into in terms of just sort of its prestige and ranking and all that sort of stuff. That's one law school. The other law school, though, is the best law school for the money. And that can be a far different law school. Going to a great law school can give you options, but going to a lesser ranked, law school, but coming out with little or no debt can give you options too, just as you talked about. And then the third law school I say that they're going to look at is I don't know if maybe best is the right word, but what is a law school, a good law school in a city where you want to practice law when you first get out of school? Because if you want to practice law in Chicago, well, there's a lot of good schools in the Chicago area. There are also comparable schools out in California or on the East Coast, but if you go to those schools and then you want to move back to Chicago, you can do it, but you've just made it harder for yourself because the Career Services Office won't have as many connections to the Chicago firms. Fewer Chicago firms will come out to some of those law schools. The alumni network won't be as strong. And so I encourage students to think about, well, where do you want to live when you get out of law school? Because the practice of law tends to become very sort of localized with taking the bar exam and then avoiding taking the bar exam in another place a second time out of school. And so to think about that, and sometimes these 3 schools can be 2 schools or whatever, depending on the financial aid and the ranking and the location.
Right. So you have those 3 schools, and I think sometimes when you go a little lower in the rankings, not only is it going to help your financial situation, sometimes these regional schools, you're going to practice in the Southwest, and so you're looking at places in the Southwest. You're at a regional school instead of a national school, still a great legal education, well respected by the people you're going to be practicing law with, and lo and behold, your profile in terms of how well you're likely to do your first year based on your LSAT and GPA is suddenly in the top of that class. And if you work hard, you're diligent, of course you're going to be. All pre-law students they always say they're going to. But if you're a diligent student, your chances of coming out in the top 10% of that class suddenly are 50 times better than if you went to Harvard Law School. And so, and that I think the evidence is out there. The empirical studies are out there that say you're going to have better job prospects. You're going to have a better chance, if particularly those who want to go into the regular practice of law.
There are some studies. One that was highlighted in the National Jurist recently about that grades seem to matter more than the law school ranking in terms of job market and success and happiness and things like that.
Yeah. So what about Christian law schools? I mean, I teach at Regent Law School, Christian school. There are some others, Roman Catholic schools like St. Thomas. Liberty University has a new Christian law school. There's a California bar school called Trinity Law School that we have express missions to think Christianly about the law. And these aren't, by no stretch are we included in the rank of the elite law school. But I think these schools are options for a particular kind of student.
Sure.
Would you ever give advice in terms of maybe not just the Christian schools, but also other niche schools that have specialties or are known for a particular way of thinking about the world?
Wheaton College, at the undergraduate level is integrating faith into the learning, and so the schools you're talking about are doing that, at the law school level. If a student wants that, then I certainly, I do ask about that issue, and if that's something they're still seeking out, want to continue, then I definitely mention some of the schools that you just talked about. And then some students would like to be at an environment where they don't feel lonely as a Christian. And again, those schools, other schools that are Christian friendly, would fit in that kind of like a Pepperdine or a Notre Dame,
right?
Would fit in that category. So some students are looking for that. And so, yeah, I definitely work with them on those kinds of issues.
So just sort of U.S. News and World Rankings is not the only way to choose a law school.
No,
we look at region. You look at your own gifts and talents, your own interests.
And
then
the
give you financial aid.
Financial aid is huge.
As well as mission and vision of the particular school. Well, this is helpful.
All right.
Thanks for
Thanks
talking
for
about this
having me.
stuff. Yeah, enjoyed it.
See ya.